Hey YouTube, this is just going to be some clarifications on the previous video in light of the responses made by Pyro and Matt. Now, I did not mean to suggest at all that time is merely a human-imposed notion and that there's no objective time out there. Instead, what I meant to suggest was that our particular perception of time in experience may be somewhat convoluted with our intuitions, and the actual behavior of the brain is what creates these intuitions for biological and evolutionary purposes. However, I will just delve slightly more into that subject in light of the video responses. To me, the most fascinating thing about time, or the most fascinating explanation, should I say, is when we consider that time has a beginning and the particular flow of time in our universe. Now, Stephen Hawking touches on the theory that, well, obviously time and space, since Einstein, are considered very interlinked and part of the same space-time substance that is the constitute of our universe. So it's impossible to truly separate space and time. You cannot have space without time, and you cannot have time without any space for which it can occur. So this is certainly very interesting, and it's something that needs to be considered as well. But I like Hawking's explanation of time, and it's one that I usually refer to when I'm thinking of time myself. This, I think, also solves the problem of does time have a beginning, but essentially it's as follows. Imagine that space and time are, well, space-time is a four-dimensional substrate that is existence. It's from the beginning, if it's sensible to talk about time as a beginning, which I'll show you it's not, and it's expansive throughout the universe. So it's space-time we can think of as the universe, existence in its fundamental entirety. Now what Hawking says is, instead of thinking of time passing linearly across this space, what we can instead think of is the four-dimensional space-time curved in on itself into a circle. And therefore, just like it's absurd to suggest that the planet Earth has a starting point, although you can certainly travel along this surface, it's similarly impossible to suggest that time has a beginning if we adopt this four-dimensional enclosed view of time. So I'm not suggesting that time doesn't exist in the universe, but I'm saying that our conceptions of time and consciousness are ill-conceived due to certain Cartesian notions that still linger even in our most basic materialist, reductionist views of consciousness. So that's really what I'm trying to get at. But when I say I think, let me just get this straight, I don't mean to suggest therefore that time is only imposed by us, but in this particular four-dimensional universe, as we are beings in time, it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, if it's possible to talk about evolution having a motive, which it's not, but let's just use that as an analogy. It makes sense for evolutionary creatures to anticipate the future, to avoid things, to try to predict what's going to happen based on past experiences, which are rooted in the physical world. And this means that I'm not trying to deny the physical nature of time, or the cosmological nature of time. Certainly that's important, and it's one of the reasons, as beings in the cosmological nature of the universe, it's one of the reasons that we've developed the notions of time that we have. However, I do really want to dispel the myths of what Dennett calls Cartesian materialism, which still has at the center something like the linear time we know passing on into consciousness. For example, in the Phi effect, we think that it might take a certain amount of time for objects to travel into conscious experience, like trains traveling down a train track, doing it in particular sequential order. But with the multiple drafts model, this no longer makes sense. It's not that in multiple drafts there is a revision to consciousness, because consciousness just is this ongoing process, this multiple drafts, with no particular draft as being considered the final, complete conscious experience, but rather it's an ongoing draft. It's, imagine, as I said before, an academic draft that's continually being revised. There's certain fragments. When you write papers or something like that, you might have 2 or 3 different drafts going at the same time. You might pass the drafts over to various different areas. You might take a paragraph from here, put it into this draft. After a certain report, which we can think of as a conscious report, or the publication of this draft, there will also be re-editing, republication, re-evaluation, with no draft itself being the definitive stream of consciousness. So therefore, we get rid of this idea of an occasion of experience, because there is no definitive occasion of experience, only particular reports because of particular probes occurring at particular spaces in time. Now, there's a series of experiments that Dennett uses to point this out. One of them, which is perhaps even more intriguing than the Phi effect, is a subject gets 5 taps on the wrist, 2 on the elbow, and then 2 on the forearm. Now, what's quite interesting is what the subject reveals is that what the subject reports is that he feels as if a small creature was hopping along his arm. Of course, if you don't have the stimulus at the elbow, the mechanical poking device at the elbow, he doesn't report that at all. Now, with the traditional Cartesian materialism view of objects passing into consciousness, like trains going through a train station, and as James puts it, a stream of consciousness, it's very difficult to explain how that would occur, because does the brain in a Stalin-esque editing room version of this, does the brain wait for the stimulus to fully be received? How does it know how long to delay consciousness? Or in an Orwellian picture of this, perhaps the original stimulus is consciously perceived as 5 taps at the elbow and then is overridden. Both of these pictures are very hard to actually stomach when it comes to the particular neurology of consciousness. And as well, say if we got hit in the leg, in the ankle, and in the hip at the same time, both of these are very far away from the brain. So, does the how does the ankle know to wait that little bit longer than the hip? It doesn't. Otherwise, you put a delay in consciousness, which is variable. And this is why I favour the multiple drafts. But again, I didn't mean to just criticise you Matt, backhandedly when I said this is why I don't believe in pan-experientialism. But if we accept the multiple drafts model of consciousness, then it makes no sense to talk about occasions of experience or a stream of consciousness at all. Instead of a single stream of consciousness, all we're left with is multiple drafts consisting of internal and external probes, resulting in different reports, both internal reports and external reports. So hopefully I've cleared a few things up. Peace.